All right, so our first episode of the Apocalypse podcast was rough and ready and unprofessional. So this time we're doing a real introduction. Welcome to the Apocalypse podcast. We're just two nerdy brothers talking about nerdy stuff. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Taylor, as they tell me.
Shut up.
Okay.
So we're Kyle and we're Taylor, and today we're going to talk about the video game Until Dawn. I have not played this game. I know of it. I kind of know that it's a story-driven horror drama kind of game, but I haven't actually played it. Taylor has fully played it, so this is going to be, we're trying out like maybe a one-sided conversation where one of us has a lot of experience with a video game or has seen a movie, for instance, and the other one doesn't. And so we're going to try to see if this sort of 50-50 format works. So Taylor's going to be talking about it, and I'm going to ask questions and maybe be interested. We'll see if I can pretend long enough. Let's go.
Also, shout out to Cass at work. This is a test to see if you're listening. If you have an idea for me,
dude.
please tell me.
You're going to be so busted if you're not listening.
Dude, I'm going to freaking IM him on Monday or something, and he's going to look like a real jerk.
Well, we're on Spotify now, so they got all the people at your work can look you up.
Yeah, I made a delivery.
Oh, did they, by the way?
Yes, I did have to do, like, finding us in Spotify was surprisingly more complicated than you'd think, but I did show.
You literally couldn't just type the Apocalypse podcast and it doesn't come up?
Not at first, because we're so, like, what do we have? An episode that maybe has 0 listens.
Right, yes.
So that, like,
exactly.
you had to scroll past, like, the 1,000 songs that have the word apocalypse in, because it's almost the exact same word.
Damn it.
So our SEO right now, not hot, but in theory we get there.
Okay.
All right.
Well.
So, Until Dawn, I wanted to talk about this because Halloween's right around the corner, if in reverse times. But this is probably how do I even start this? Okay. So, Until Dawn is probably one of my favorite experiences I've ever played. I don't know if I'd want to call it like one of my favorite games, but it's kind of the same sensation you have of like when you see a really good horror movie with a group of friends. That is the kind of, they channeled that into a video game. So I'll give you the actual premise here. So I'll give you this. The setup is, it's a series of friends, and they have kind of are all up in this cabin up in the mountains up in, I should know what state it's in, but it's somewhere northeast. It's cold, wintry. There are mountains. And it's a group of, they're all in high school, a bunch of high schoolers, and this one girl, her name is Beth, has a big old crush on Josh, which is the resident hot friend. Everybody wants to hook up with him. And everybody knows this, so they play this joke on her where all the friends will hide in the closet of this bedroom. Josh will pretend to hit on Beth. Beth will then, they'll capture it on film and laugh at her, which... Sidebar, I don't know what is up with like high schoolers being ultra cruel. Can you imagine like being like, you know what I want to do? I want to post a photo of my best friend stripping for a guy she likes, and we all make fun of her for it. Haha, you have feelings. Pretty fucked up shit.
Yeah, I mean that was literally the first word that came to mind. I was like, that sounds ridiculously cruel.
Yeah, exactly. So The prank happens. It's revealed to her. She freaks out, and her and her twin sister. She's a twin. I guess I didn't call that out, but so Beth runs out to the house, and her twin sister follows her and calling out to her. And all the friends were like, "Oh, we were just joking. It's just a prank," which, as you know, works really well. And as they're running out, a dude with a flamethrower is just like blasting in the snow and is kind of stalking them. They get freaked out. They come to an edge where there's no railing. They hear like monster sounds, and they see this dude with his flamethrower. They freak out and they fall off the ledge. Both of them. And then the game jumps forward. I think it's about a year or two, the anniversary of their disappearance, because they're never discovered. They're never found. And the game kind of starts here. All the friends are coming back as like this celebration of Beth and Hannah. Hannah was the other twin's name.
So, who saw this flamethrower guy?
Nobody.
Did everybody, or just the two girls that disappeared?
So when the two twins run out, the friends are at like the edge of the property calling like, Hannah, it's okay, come back. And you don't see them in the rest of that like opening sequence. As far as you know, and the game makes it explicitly clear, nobody knows anything. The family, no clue. Nobody knows what happens to the girls. And nobody saw this other man. There's no like, they're kind of rule that's just missing. Like they don't think anything necessarily nefarious happened, like they got eaten or killed or anything. But I do want to call out that this game, the two lead actors, Hayden Panettiere is playing one lead, and Mr. Robot himself, Rami Malek, is the brother of the twins. So, the performances are incredible. So this game came out in 2015. So, it's a PS4 game. But the character models still look surprisingly good. Like, they look like the actors, and they're very, very emotive in the face, which is really important because this is more or less, the gameplay isn't really anything other than, walk, make choices, or interact with an object, flip it over to read the lore. So that's the setup. And then the way the game kind of goes is now it introduces the characters one at a time, and they'll have this splash screen. So the very first character you mess with is Sam, who is Hayden Panettiere's character. And it'll have 3 descriptors about them. I don't have her descriptors besides one for sure. She's listed as adventurous, caring, and curious maybe? But the point being, you think of these as kind of throwaway, oh, whatever. But it is a really, really cool thing as it sets up these characters. As they do specific things, it kind of makes sense why... sometimes you'd be like, is this person so... doing something so weird and so dumb? And it's well, the game sets up, as an adventurous person... Sam's going to do stuff that the other characters can't do. She's willing to climb up a rock wall because, that's just the shit she does in her spare time anyway. And that kind of quells a lot of the problems I think I have of, why would this guy do this behavior? This seems weird. And
it sounds like it's almost like a shortcut for character development, which is interesting considering it's a game. So, they have a lot of time. But I guess if you're doing time jumps and you're trying to establish this group of friends... it would probably take too long to fully develop each character and give the player a really good sense of every single character. So if they just introduce a character and go, this guy takes, unnecessary risks and he's kind of an asshole, and this guy is, the loser of the group nerd that always gets made fun of, but he's, actually cool and whatever.
So
they're just little shortcuts.
Yeah,
that's what it sounds like.
And what's also interesting is, so Sam is kind of like the protagonist. She's the good character, so she doesn't have anything interesting. But they do introduce characters that have their own personal motivation beyond I want to go and commemorate my friend. Chris, who is Josh's best friend, has guilt because I kind of shortcutted the opening sequence because there's 9 people and the names of the characters aren't necessary per se, but this dude was passed out drunk that night. And so there's kind of this guilt of well, if I was awake at the time, could I have stopped this? But this other girl's introduced, her name's Ashley, and it explicitly says has a crush on Chris. Now, whenever you're playing as Ashley or Chris, you have almost this subconscious motivation to kind of lean into Chris would be nice to Ashley because they have feelings for each other and they won't do it, but the game doesn't tell you have to be nice to them, but as a player it kind of sets up this idea that these characters already exist and you're just piloting them. I don't know, it's weird. You don't think it would work, but it's surprisingly compelling. So that's I bring that up because that's the very first thing they sack you with is name of character, 3 traits, and it kind of leans into it gives you suggestions of maybe what choices that character would make. You kind of already know that if there's a dude chasing her, Sam would easily be able to do maybe slide under a table, whereas if Chris was in that situation, he's a dumb idiot who's kind of chubby. He's not going to be able to outrun this dude, but he might be stronger. So maybe I would want to get the weapon instead of running. And those are like not explicitly said to you, but knowing, and as you have time with these characters, you'd be surprised at like how many when you're playing someone else, because like I'd say about every hour or so you swap to you play as all of them more than once. The game never jumps time, but it does jump. Like it plays it's called Until Dawn because they're trying to survive until dawn. And I know, very clever. I'm sure I probably didn't even need to explain it, but the idea is like as they'll cut right before something might happen to a character, so you don't know if they're okay or not. But
just like a movie.
Oh, Jesus Christ, that was painful.
That's what Dean used to do.
You say used to, as
Austin
if
Powers.
Man is Austin Powers, as far as I'm concerned, until the day he dies. He's still gonna say, "I'm gonna watch a movie" in the most uncomfortable way possible. So, shout outs to Dean. Crap.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, totally. Thank you, Deraily Boy over here.
Yeah, you're saying they got to survive until dawn.
Oh, so that's the big gimmick. I totally this is why your notes should be better than my notes are, because I didn't even think about the big gimmick is that any and all of these characters can die within the story. There are multiple points in each chapter in which some character could die or survive. So there's an option where and there's so many different scenarios in which you could see how as soon as you make one choice, you're like, fuck, what if did I save them by making this choice? What would happen in the other one? And it isn't like Telltale games where it's like, oh, it's a coloring book that like none of your choices really matter. The endings are the same. There's a character who can die in like chapter 2 of a 14 chapter game versus I think one character. In fact, it can get to the point where they start killing each other. It gets wild. What I know I'm all over the place because this experience was so cool. So the way this game plays is it's just, you're a character and you're kind of moving forward, an event happens and, like, for example, the game starts with you as Sam and you're like, okay, I'm at you have to take like a ski lodge. I forget what those things, the chairs that take you up the mountain. What is that called?
Oh, shit. I should know the name.
Yeah, gotcha.
I don't remember.
I think it's a skibbity-doo. So they take the skibbity-doo up the mountain, but the idea is like she's there before everyone else. And so you kind of getting the controls down. You're looking around. You can see you can interact with objects. And the big one they put in right in front of you so you don't miss are these totems. And when you pick them up, it's a flash forward of a scene in which somebody can die. It's like maybe a 1 second blurry clip that's played out of context. And it's just like, what the fuck was that? Because the game has this thing called the butterfly effect, which I think everybody knows what the butterfly effect is, but the idea is, you make a choice.
Are you touching your mic or moving it a lot?
No, I was holding on to it. Was it noticeable?
Yeah. Yes, don't hold on to it.
Don't tell me what to do. So the
Problem
butterfly
solving on the fly.
The butterfly effect system has there's a whole screen of maybe it's 30 separate individual butterflies, and the idea is there will be certain moments that they highlight as hey, this is an important moment, and depending on this choice, you won't know the payout until way later. So half the butterfly will fill in on the menu, so you know what choice you made, but you don't know what the ripple effect is later. And those totems give you a possible consequence of a butterfly effect choice, but you don't know what choice leads to that consequence. And so you have these images of someone's gonna get attacked in this building, and so when you get there, you're like, oh shit, that character is here. Did I And so you start to think about, okay, how do I avoid this? And what I think is so cool about the game is it's constantly giving you information that makes you make bad choices, or at least more complicated choices. Because if you didn't have the extra context of Emily will be in a situation in which a creature might attack her, you would die in this mine shaft, and it's well, if I didn't know that the mine shaft was dangerous, I may not be extra cautious when playing as Emily in this location. But now that I know there might be a monster here, I should probably make sure she's I look around for a weapon or something because that might be relevant. But it's a pretty simplistic game. Like, it's just you have a character model, you can walk through the environment, and they're, for the most part, it's just like you keep moving forward until a cutscene happens, or there's an interactable object on the ground that you need to pick up and then open the door.
So with the gameplay sounding as simple as it is, what makes this appealing as a game and not just like a TV show or something? I guess because it's slightly interactable, you have control over the fate of the characters.
Yeah, and in some ways it's gamey in that, like, they added some, like, the butterfly effect, seeing how things ripple, and like they add a little bit. And I think that, like, to answer your question more directly, nothing in particular makes it like, if it was an interactable movie, I think you could still make Until Dawn. In fact, they're making a movie of it, and I think that's probably one of the easy video game adaptations of all time. But I do think it would lose some of the magic, because what makes it a video game is just like you get the input, you get the choices. But you're right that I don't know that it necessarily, and that's why I said I didn't think it was one of my favorite games. It was one of my favorite experiences, because I don't have a real good justification why, like, well, why is it, what makes it good, like, why a game? It's like, I don't know, man. That's a great question. But I'm trying to think if there was, like, a nice, clean segue I had into my next bit. So what is really good about it, besides what I think is kind of like the setup of, like, kind of getting you in the shoes of the characters, is the story is so twisty and turny and got lots of layers and really good foreshadowing, and lots of, like, none of the characters, okay, let me back up. Most of the characters are really complex in that even after you have finished the story and you understand their motivations, like, their relationships with people aren't cut and dry in this, like, this dude was clearly an asshole, or, like, this is how he feels about this person. But it's like this complex, they feel very real people. It's kind of really impressive, especially when we talk about Rami Malek's character. He was, like, jaw-dropping, and eventually, like, he kind of spirals, like, really out of control at some point in the story. And, like, there's something really special about watching someone descend into madness, and it, like, really, you just being like, I don't know what they're capable of at this point. There's a lot of moments of that. There's some of the twists might be a little bit predictable, but, like, not in a way that you would predict it. Like, you might know that, oh, that guy's probably a good guy, not a bad guy, but you don't know in what context he's going to serve, or, like, what is his real role, or, like, who is the main villain? What is really happening? Because, like, the game sets it up as, when they're here, there's a serial killer slasher chasing them around. There's someone with a knife and a mask chasing these fuckers around. That's kind of what you think the game is about, is surviving a serial killer slasher. And it certainly is not.
So is there more? So if it's not about a slasher killing them, then I assume that means it's more about interconflict between the members of the group, and, like you said, characters like Rami Malek's descending into madness and turning into a villain himself, even though he's just a friend of the group.
What I would say is that it's a little bit of, like, so the descent isn't necessarily, like, it's kind of like the idea of when you put a lot of people in a stressful situation, they start to turn on each other because they can't handle it. But I don't know how to, like, even begin.
Is there a slasher, man?
Do you want me to tell you?
Is that a spoiler in the game? If
yes.
There's a slasher guy or not?
I think it's, in fact, it is very. That's one of the biggest moments. Is, like, some people saw what the twist was coming, but the reason why, and, like, the motivations and how much work. And what's really cool about, like, when the like, serial killer, like, plot kind of has its moment, is that, like, you go and you're like, what the hell? They only answered, like, half the questions. There's still, like, this other half of things that are happening that couldn't possibly be because of this. And it's so clever in, like, the way it
Trojan horses this other much more crazy narrative that has been there the whole time. You just attached it to this other force that had nothing to do with it, but it feels like they're working to. I don't know. It's really cool and really impressed. Like every time I replay it, which is a single time, but it sounds cooler when I say every single time I replay it. Like there's a moment that I forgot, or I was like, "Holy shit!" I didn't realize how well foreshadowed or something you thought was done by one faction is actually done by a completely different one, or the meaning of that message is you interpret it one way, but now that you know this, it's just like, the classic Fight Club rewatch of like, man, this is really smart. They knew, they laid out this all ahead of time. It isn't a twist for a twist's sake, but like they had told you the truth the whole time. You just interpret these different elements incorrectly.
So how many like actual endings does the game have? Do you know?
Technically, the way it works is like there's an ending. How many people survive is like the big variable, and depending on how many people survive, they like during the credit roll, it'll have like kind of like an interview with the survivors, and they talk about like their mental state at the time, and there's like a bunch of variations depending on what choices were made, who survived, who died, etc. But like the actual story does get resolved regardless. Huh? I guess I would say like it's two endings. If someone survives, it's ending like the canonical ending, and if nobody survives, that's like the bad ending. Okay. And if I'm not mistaken, it's actually kind of hard to have everybody die. You have to like, I had to look up a guide of how to make sure everyone was dead, because it's usually like there's a character that survives at the very end to kind of wrap up the plot. But, and that's the other thing that I do like about it. It's the classic. It is this thing of like, what I love about like D&D in a lot of ways is it's built in with failure as a gameplay tool, right? You're not going to succeed at, most of your die rolls, or a lot of your role playing, your die rolls, but you critically fail. Yeah. Well, what happens? Let's keep going. What does that scene look like? And that game is like, well, what if we made it so that like if you fail, we don't stop. It isn't a retry. Do the scene right. It is, man, maybe that character will die. Maybe that injury that they got because you didn't do well will cause them to die later, or it might not be relevant at all.
I actually love that gameplay mechanic, because obviously for, almost the history of video games, it's always been like you go into a level, you try to do the level, and if you can't do it, you die and you restart the level. But I think roguelites or roguelikes, I guess both or one or the other, really exemplified why that the whole like when you die, you don't actually kind of, you're not progressing. And Hades comes to mind as a game that like you're supposed to die over and over, and every time you die, you learn something new. You get more lore. Like the story develops only because you've died, or only when you die. And I really love that. It just makes the entire experience so fun, because dying can be so frustrating when that's like not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to succeed, so when you die, it's annoying, and of course that's part of just games in general, and that's a fine thing to experience as well. But I do not at all because I'm a sore loser, but I do like it when you lose. You just don't feel nearly as bad, and it's almost exciting.
Yeah,
like Hades again.
Exactly. I think
it's almost like, oh fuck, like I'm dying. Yeah, I died. What am I going to learn new now?
I think that's cool. A really good example of like, I think that philosophy change of like, how do we turn failure into a gameplay mechanic and not a game state? And I think this is like a really fun way. But what I haven't really talked about, what makes the like horror movie, because like it seems to understand the level of camp to have for a slasher movie to be fun but scary. And that's a fun thing. And then like, it's up to interpretation. Like, I don't know that you would love the writing, but I think it wouldn't turn you off, except for one character. We have a yoga girl in this game, but I know for a fact they are trying to get you. She is like the character that is there to instill distrust in everybody to make like situations more tense. So she's more of a, important piece of the narrative puzzle than a character you want to survive, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Fuck, I had a point with that, and then it just drifted right out of my brain hole.
Well, we were talking about failure as a game mechanic rather than a game state.
But yeah, I agree with that. Oh, it was just about the writing in general and like why I found the game so fun in this group setting. So just for perspective, I bought this game on launch day because I was just excited for it, and I sat down I was in college at the time. Shout out to ISU, go Redbirds.
Wait, how long ago was that?
2015, dude. It's been almost 10 years.
This game is that old?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's 2015.
Wow, I feel like this came out kind of recently. That's
So,
wild.
Well, to be fair, there is a PS5 remake that literally came out like 2 weeks ago.
Okay, that's why it's fresh on my mind.
100%. But I sat down after class at 2 p.m. and I got done playing it at 4 a.m. I beat it in one sitting because I could not stop.
Wow.
In fact, so me and Brittany,
Took you 14 hours then.
me and Brittany sat together and played that entire game together. Like that's the level of. But what's so fun about it is it's like when you're not in the like what I'd say there's like kind of the talky sections and then the actiony sections. So the talky stuff is you're going around this kind of creepy, not so great house and like, oh god, is this creepy murder dolls in the basement? Oh my god, is there a slasher up here? Like they kind of like tease you of like, here's all these different types of like horror movie tropes, and you don't quite understand how they connect or what's real and what's not. But in all of the action sequences, there's always a break, a pause, and they give you, I think it's about like 2 or 3 seconds, and you have to make a decision right now. Do you go left, hide under the bed, and you have 3 seconds to pick.
Great.
And it is the most like fun thing to be as a group is you just like having people yell, panic, like wait, which one, left or right, and feeling kind of like this. And then, someone calls it out and you're like, fuck it. All right, I'll do what you say. And that ends up getting a character killed. You can like kind of yell at your friend for it.
Yeah, sure.
It's really fun because it's like the game knows you want to be playing this in a group and kind of sets it up as kind of letting somebody have the lead. But like, I don't know. It's such a lame thing, but it really does add to the whole package. Like even by yourself, having those like... there's QuickTime events always. That's always been a thing. And QuickTime events are usually pretty lame.
events.
But I think the concept of the time is the resource we're taking away from you. Now make the decision, but you have no time to think about it and really rationalize it.
Well, also the QTEs in that game, they lead to narrative choices and discoveries. It's not just do this QTE or you're going to fail this section, which is why I've always hated them. Because one, I don't know why, but connecting my brain to my hands in video games has always been hard. That's why I hate like side scrollers and platformers. I'm just so bad at timing stuff like that. Like, I sound like I'm fucking geriatric, but
dude, you're 30.
like,
you are old. Shut the fuck up.
I know, like shooters and racing games and ARPGs, I'm kosher, man. But platformer, you make me play Super Mario or something, I'm gonna fuck it up every time, guaranteed. Like Paper Mario, I can probably never play that game. I just don't have that connection, brain to finger connection. So I've always hated QTEs. But this doesn't sound like it also doesn't sound like you're solving a puzzle where it's like, you can hide under the bed or run out of the room, but you have to complete this sequence of buttons to do either one. It doesn't sound like it's like that. You literally just make a choice, right?
Exactly. And now what I will
so
say...
it's not even a QuickTime event. It's like a QuickTime decision.
Right, but I will say there is QuickTime events specifically, but like they're trying to punish you, right? The idea is like, oh, this dude is running. Let's hope he doesn't trip over that rock. Or you better hit a button in time. It's like to keep you locked in and on the edge of your seat. And I kind of like this idea of, those feel like it feels like what a QuickTime event was supposed to be. Because like the one game I always think of is God of War.
Yeah.
And at first,
every time I think of QTEs, I literally think of the sex QTE.
no,
thing.
dude, that is so good.
Every time.
I forgot about it is actually QTE'd. But my biggest problem with QTEs is that they force you to disengage with what you're watching because you need to know, well, what button am I going to press? And then making, so God of War, I always thought is such a cool spectacle. And like the tutorial in the first game where you're taking down this Hydra and it's having you, press X, then triangle, then left stick, half circle. And like, I'm so looking at those icons that I can't really watch Kratos as he does these really awesome cinematic kind of takedowns of a massive monster, because it's not like do a bunch of buttons in a row and then watch the play out. It's button, 1 second later, button, 1 second later, button. Well,
yeah, I could see that being really disruptive.
But with Until Dawn, it's like, well, the QuickTime events, at least at this point, is like all I'm watching is someone run, and I am deciding, like, if I fail, then the reaction happens. It's not like, I don't know how to explain it, but, with God of War, when you miss that QTE, you basically take damage or die or whatever. Whereas this one is kind of, I don't know, it's just like that expectation of what it is that these breaks in the actions serve. And I think it serves to heighten the tension of trying to keep someone alive. And I guess part of it is it isn't as flashy as man punches a Hydra in the face with a fucking sword on a chain that he can whip around. So it's not much to miss.
The QTE isn't leading to something exciting like it does in Game of Thrones. Jesus Christ, God of War, because God of War is a video game, right? Like you're playing a guy who kills stuff and it's fun, and so the QTEs they try to link to the character doing actions and being a badass. Where in this game it sounds like your QTEs are more for like saving a character's life, trying to make sure that they succeed.
Yeah, like the big one I always point to is someone is being actively chased by something that is faster than you, and you're running through woods in the middle of the winter in, like, your underwear.
Yeah.
That is like,
that
and so, like, that's
anxiety-inducing.
So, and like that exact scenario is the, and that's why it's like, it shows that QuickTime events in theory aren't bad, which is one of those things that I think what is the testament of why I love this so much is when I would describe the gameplay elements of this, I would not like it. But it is taking what I would think is uninteractive or boring video game things, but putting them in a package where like, oh, it makes sense that it's designed this way. And I think that's one of the... This game is like one of the reasons I started to get really into like and started to play visual novels and like kind of like read more of like, oh, interactivity just for more story parts is fine. Like if your game story is good and your characters are good, it's just a playable movie. And movies are good, right? I like movies.
Yeah.
So
ironically, the interactable movies that they've made are all fucking terrible.
Dog doo-doo
and it
poo-poo.
seems like it would be easy to do when you consider something like Until Dawn, where also the fact that you binged it in 14 hours, I mean, like that's the exact length of a hour-long episodic TV show.
Yeah, I mean, who wasn't watching Game of Thrones season 1 in one sitting?
Yeah,
it's a rhetorical question. So, everyone did that.
Yes.
Gosh, remember when Game of Thrones was like a cultural touchstone that everyone looked at and was like, man, we figured it out.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But
yeah, they ran out of source material and then realized that they ran out of talent when they didn't have source material to work off of.
So,
anyways,
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can really talk about because like what I find really compelling is the writing and the scenarios that the characters are in. The way that the storyline kind of weaves them in and out, which is I think is really impressive, is that they have like I said, I think there's 7 to 9 people. I didn't like write down the raw number, but it manages to like get almost all of the characters to interact with each other in like a organic kind of way. Of like, there are plenty of horror movies where like they have to come up with some contrivance to bring them into the next room, right? And I think they do a pretty good job of not coming up with any contrivance instead of like, oh, they just needed Emily and Josh to be in the same room for this fight. Yeah. So of course they come up with some like, oh, this room blacked out and I'm too scared. No, it's like, I don't know, like Emily is actively trying to get to the top of this tower and Josh is looking for his girlfriend, and that the tower is where she would, like, it's,
Yes, it is.
it like makes sense why
sounds-
these characters are interacting with each other, and like a lot of them have really compelling growths. Though there is one, Matt. Look, I'm sorry, Matt. You fucking suck, man. He has nothing interesting to say. He is like the boyfriend of the mean girl who he's not friends with his friend group, right? He's just there because his girlfriend is going, and it doesn't have anything interesting going on. And I say that,
You
like,
know what?
meaning what?
That's exactly. I said, you know what? That's the exact character in A Violent Nature. The main character's like boyfriend who maybe proposed to her. I can't quite remember. But
Yeah.
that's exact. He was a mean asshole who was like really boring and had nothing interesting going on, and then he dies.
Yeah. Well, the difference, at least this guy's like the opposite of an asshole, to the point that it's like it's a little saccharine. It's like, bro, no one likes you, and this is not the way to get them to like you. You're trying a little too hard. But what I do like is that, when you're playing as Matt, like, you can kind of lean into, like, I want to be accepted into this group. I want them to like me. Or do I want to be, like, get Emily to like me? Because, like, it's like they're dating, and it's like, you two hate each other. What are you doing? Please.
Right.
Like, you two in the same room ruins everybody. But I think that's intentional. It's to set tension, and then, like, when they get separated, now it's like, oh, I should have been nicer. Da, da, da. But I'm trying to think of what else I can really talk about without getting into details. Because, like I said, the biggest highs for me are the performances, the story, and that general kind of excitement I got from, like, I have no idea what you got next, but you have been nailing this. But what I will say, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, you have a thought.
No, it was onto a whole new topics or new section of it. So continue with your thoughts.
Well, make sure you don't lose your thought.
I won't.
I was just going to comment saying that it sounds really narratively complex. It almost sounds Baldur's Gate-esque.
All right. Well, okay. I'll pull it back. It is not quite that level of, like, what I'll say is it appears that complex, which I think is really interesting.
I was gonna make that comment. If they did a good job of, like, making it seem deeper than it is, there might be, like, very simple, code going on in the background that kind of weaves it all together in a really simple way. But on the surface, when you're actually playing, it seems maybe more.
Yeah, and I think they do like the butterfly effect system kind of gamifies the concept of, like, wow, there are so many moving parts. But once you've played the game enough and you see the matrix, it's like, oh, this character can only die in one scene. But but the game does a good enough job to you never think anyone is safe. And realistically, there's this one character that I think they have like 15 different spots they can die. It's like, they kind of have like easy mode characters and hard mode characters, and it can be kind of fun. And some of that of, like, not knowing if this is the scene where they can die can be kind of compelling in its own way. But yeah, I'd say there's a little bit of, like, once you figure out what the actual death scenes are, you kind of, the magic, is a little dissipated, because it's like, oh, it's not quite as dynamic. But it's also when you consider the team is not a particularly large team, and it's like, no, this is probably the best narrative game that is just like a Telltale style. Your choices kind of matter, but it turns out there's only like one or two that are major impacts. But I will say Until Dawn has a lot more, like, of those spikes than in most games of its kind. But now what I was going to say, what is crazy is that the game was developed as a PS3 game, a PlayStation Move only video game. It was originally designed to be a motion game, and they still, I think they still had Hayden Panettiere as, like, the face character. Like, she's been attached to this project for, like, the whole time, which is, I still don't know why they were, but to be fair, this studio ended up making like 4 or 5 follow-ups. They aren't sequels, but like anthology horror stories where it's like, standalone, same kind of engine, same gameplay mechanics, but like one of them has Sean Astin as the lead, another one has okay. You remember the Disney Channel?
Yeah.
Do you remember The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody?
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, I'm going to back up. I can hear that. Her name is the Asian girl that was in a lot of early Disney Channel stuff that we watched. I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but like as soon as you see her, you're like, oh yeah, she was like in everything in Disney Channel.
She was in The Social Network, right?
Yeah. It was Andrew Garfield's girlfriend in that movie. Yeah.
Yes.
See, I told you.
Racist? Is it racist that you know Andrew Garfield's name but not her?
It's not racist in that I can't tell you the last project I have seen her in. I saw The Social Network less than a month ago.
Right.
Side note, Social Network, for anyone who's out there, top 5 movie of all time, maybe? It is insane that is as good as it is. It is this is the fastest 2-hour movie about nothing, like the most boring things possible, and it's exclusively just talking. I don't know how. I just blown away by it.
That's a movie specifically. Obviously, I absolutely adore The Social Network. I think it's incredible, and I think Aaron Sorkin wrote it. And
yeah, he did screenplay.
He's known for his amazing, fast, quippy dialogue, and it. The reason that movie is so good is because the dialogue pushes the movie forward so well because of how. I can't think of the words to describe it, but you know what I'm saying. Like the way that they all talk to each other is such a strong like through line driving force of the movie, and that's what makes it so fun. And it's a movie that Lauren has, my wife.
Shout out to Lauren Sereno Olpalk. I don't actually know her legal name, but shout out
Lauren Sereno. She would never take my last name.
Yeah, because
I demanded it of her, but she refused, and that was that. She always says that it's the movie that like she should hate and wants to hate and doesn't want to enjoy, but yeah, you watch it, you turn it on, and just like literally frame one, you're pulled in. That opening bar scene with Rooney Mara and Jesse Eisenberg, I mean, it's just unbelievably good. And no matter who you are, no matter what genre you like, you can watch The Social Network, and it's phenomenal.
Even if you only like horror video games called Until Dawn.
Right.
It's great. But
so what were we talking about?
Realistically, again. I think I was kind of wrapping up my non-spoilerly love for that game. It is got it still holds up graphically, like a 2015 one. Like it looks like a PS4 game, sure, but it looks like a PS4 game in a good way. Like it just looks like a decent thing. All the performances are really great. I find the different simple gameplay systems surprisingly keep you pulled in, because like when you see those totems and those deaths, you're like, yo, this bitch's jaw is gone. How do we get to here? Oh my god. Like in some of those, like they plant the seeds of like, you think you know the horror now, but it is way more intense. Like they don't even know, and like they'll show locations, you're like, where the hell are they at? I can't even tell where you are. And it feels like a believable location even after all these, like, you know, because you have to have lots of different set pieces. You can't just have like the one location, but they make it seem like, yeah, I believe this is all part of one area. It's great. I am waiting for the new one to go on sale because I just want to get it again. I want to talk spoilers about it, so if that's something that wants to be done, I have some notes in order of what I want to share with it, but that might be something we circle back to. I don't know if we want to or not, but I would love to talk more about this if I could. But at least for the non-story stuff, that's why Until Dawn is something everyone should play, including people who don't like horror movies. It is a little, I'd say, like, it's not as violent as you would think it is based on its premise, but it is definitely a hard M, by sure.
Okay.
I don't know how much you would like playing it, but I feel like if it was a like if they could distill that into a television show, and the choices are like pre-selected, I think you would get a kick out of it. I think it's really cool, and I also love how unique of a premise it was. Like at the time of, like, I don't know, a pick your own adventure horror movie video game in the mid 2010s. I don't know. It's really cool. It sold pretty well, reviewed decently, a lot better than you would have assumed. They've made a couple
for the way you're talking about it, it sounds like it would have been reviewed super well. I mean, it sounds almost groundbreaking.
And I think a lot of that is that if you are a gamer-ass gamer, like, it's just not hitting the highs that it would hit for me because I care about character and story as well. So, like, you know, I think you couldn't give that game a 10 even if its story was perfect and, like, flawless because it's, I don't know, as a game, it's not that
I see, yeah.
exciting. So if you're thinking of them like, oh, games are toys to be played with, I could see someone being like, I don't know how you could ever think it's that good. So it's like one of those conceits I'm willing to give of like, some people who want it to be more of a game aren't going to vibe with it. People who don't like horror aren't going to vibe with it. And yeah, you might not like the story. So that, and if you don't like the story, like, oof, that's going to be a tough one for you.
Yeah, you pretty much have nothing to go on. It's a story-driven game, so if you don't like the story or the characters, then there's not a game there to play. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So I would...
So I think this has been going for like, well, we're at 47 minutes, but we didn't actually start talking about this, I think, until, I don't know, I think it's been about like 40 or 45 minutes.
It's been roughly a half an hour to 45, for sure.
Yeah, we could break into like now spoiler section and talk about it, but I suspect that would go on for another 45 minutes. And I think what we should do is just cut it and have a nicer, cleaner, shorter little episode. And of course, as we do more of these and we work out the formatting better, we'll be able to
and in theory, we could
make
straight up
better episodes.
Like, we can just record another episode later of the spoiler section, and I could, once again, that could be another 45-minute thing.
Sure. Yeah.
And realistically, it's kind of weird to record our like normal conversations. We talk to each other about stuff, but now like kind of structuring of like there might be a person or two listening in, so you kind of want to make it like a podcast instead. Because like normally I would have just like, I know you're not playing this game. I think that you could
just go in.
But I could see you at least appreciating it, and now it's kind of like, oh yeah, what is those narratives like? Because I'm sure I've piqued your interest on like what is it that actually happens.
Yeah, no, I actually would. I will probably watch the movie. If
for sure.
Comes out. You never know if these things get stuck in development hell or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. But I do hope it does come out. It would be very funny if it got Rami Malek and Hayden Panettiere. None of the other like characters in the game are people I recognize. I'm sure they're some kind of SAG actor or whatever, but I don't recognize them too much.
Right.
But yeah, I'm cool with if you want to cut this here and just call this as a shorter podcast.
I think so, and it also depends too.
Are you still recording? I'm just.
Yeah, of course. We didn't say goodbye. So you know what? Let's do that. I thought of and like very lightly scripted our intro, but I have no idea how we want to end these. So I guess we should just
okay. So
say bye. It was good. It was good ep, man. Good talk. See ya.
Thank you, Kyle, for listening to me ramble without any visual stimuli. Thank you all out there in the internet. Even if no one hears this, I still thank you. Next week we'll... Oh, what are we doing next week?
Cass's ass is on the line or whatever.
Yeah, oh, dude. Cass, motherfucker. If you don't listen to this, I'm going to kick you in the...
So this is 2 shout-outs now. He needs to... This is
I
proof
bookend
if he
shout-outs.
listens to the whole episode. You shouted him out once in the beginning and once at the end, so he better know.
And if
you better ask him how many shout-outs he got.
Yeah, and you don't know this, but I actually shouted him out mentally and halfway through, too. So it was 3 shout-outs.
Well, okay, so then officially it's 3 shout-outs, so you got to ask him. And
yeah, he's got to hear from me and my lawyers.
Yeah. Cass, you better have the right number.
Do you have a plan or an idea for what you're going to bring next week?
No.
Okay,
that's actually a good point. That's something we should have to, something to look forward to. Yeah. I think we could bounce back and forth between movie or game week after week.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea.
We didn't know what we were... let's think out loud to each other and stop this recording because it's
Okay.
just a waste of time.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Bye bye.